The calm before the storm, the war zone had always been a place of chaos. A brutal, unending conflict between alien forces vying for control of the galaxy. The planets, once peaceful and thriving, were now reduced to battlegrounds. Alien warships clashed in space, their weapons flashing brightly against the dark sky, while the surface of the planets burned with the fire of endless wars. Amidst all this destruction, humanity had been almost forgotten. The Earthlings, once a proud and powerful force, had retreated from the front line. They were no longer a part of the war, they had become mere spectators in the eyes of the alien factions. For years, the humans had been silently observing the war from the edges of the galaxy, waiting. They had their reasons for staying out of the conflict. Their forces were small, their technology outdated compared to the advanced alien fleets. But that had never been the true reason for their withdrawal. No, the humans had learned something from their years of war. Patience. They knew that when the time came, they would strike back, and they would strike hard. It was a peaceful morning in the human military command center, tucked away in one of their hidden stations on the outer edge of the war zone. Captain Naomi Stevens stood by the large observation window, looking out at the stars. The quiet hum of the station's engines was the only sound breaking the stillness. But her mind was not at ease. She had a feeling that something was about to happen, something that would change everything. For weeks now, the intelligence reports had been strange. A series of unusual signals from deep within the war zone had been picked up, ones that didn't match any known alien frequencies. At first, the humans had written it off as interference, but the signals kept coming. Something or someone was moving in the heart of the war zone. It was too deliberate to be a mistake. Captain Stevens knew that the time to wait was over. Her instincts told her that the humans had to act now. But they were only a small force, their ships outdated and outnumbered. If they were to make their move, it had to be soon and it had to be fast. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft beeping sound from the control panel in front of her. She turned around and saw her second-in-command, Lieutenant David Harris, standing at the doorway, a look of urgency on his face. He nodded towards the screen, and Stevens moved to the console. The information on the screen was brief but startling. A human warship, the Excalibur, had just entered the war zone. The ship had been under construction for years, a project so secretive that even most of the military didn't know its true purpose. The Excalibur was not just a ship, it was a symbol. It was humanity's return to the fight, a signal to the galaxy that they were no longer the bystanders. The ship was equipped with advanced weapons, shields, and technology far superior to anything the aliens had ever seen. But there was a problem. The Excalibur had never been fully tested in battle. Its crew was still unseasoned, its systems unproven. The Excalibur had been sent to test the waters, to show that humanity still had power in the galaxy. But now that it had arrived in the war zone, it would have to face the full force of the alien armies. "We're ready, Captain," Harris said, his voice steady but filled with concern. "The Excalibur is about to engage. The war zone is about to change." Stevens nodded slowly. She had always trusted her instincts, and right now her instincts were telling her that the situation was dire. The Excalibur was humanity's greatest hope, but it was also their greatest risk. It was entering a war zone filled with powerful enemies, and there was no telling what would happen when it arrived. "We've been waiting for this moment for a long time," Stevens said, her voice firm. "But we must be ready for anything." The command room fell silent as the crew focused on their tasks. The Excalibur's engines roared to life as it made its way into the heart of the conflict. The massive warship cut through the stars, a lone predator heading straight into the chaos of the alien battlefield. But even as the ship moved forward, Stevens couldn't help but feel a deep sense of unease. It wasn't just the ship. It wasn't even the war. It was the unknown. What would happen when they entered the war zone? How would the alien forces react to humanity's sudden return to the fight? They had no answers, and that uncertainty gnawed at Stevens. "Captain," Harris said, his voice breaking the silence, "we're receiving incoming transmissions from the alien forces. They're aware of the Excalibur's presence." Stevens' pulse quickened. The aliens had been ignoring humanity for years. Now they were taking notice. "Put it on screen," she ordered. The screen flickered to life, and a strange alien face appeared. It was one of the leaders of the alien faction that controlled. The walls on his eyes were cold, calculating, and his voice was filled with disdain as he spoke. "So, the humans have finally shown their faces," the alien said, his words dripping with mockery. "You think your warship can turn the tide of this war? You think you can change anything?" Stevens didn't flinch. She stood tall and confident as she responded, her voice unwavering. "We're not here to change the war. We're here to win it." The alien's eyes narrowed. "Then you will die like all the others who thought they could challenge us." With that, the transmission cut off, leaving a silence that seemed to stretch for eternity. The crew stood in stunned silence, processing the alien leader's words. But Stevens knew one thing for sure. The calm before the storm was over. The war had just begun. The human warship's power, the Excalibur, tore through the vast emptiness of space, its sleek, dark hull gliding effortlessly toward the heart of the war zone. The ship was a masterpiece of human engineering. Its surface bristled with powerful energy weapons, its shields shimmered with an almost ethereal glow, and its engines hummed with an energy that promised destruction. For the first time in years, humanity's presence in the war zone was undeniable. It was not a fleeting moment. It was the beginning of something far greater. Captain Stevens stood on the bridge, her hands clasped behind her back as she observed the tactical readouts. The entire crew was on high alert, ready for whatever came next. The warship was fully equipped for battle, but its first engagement with the alien forces would be its true test. Could humanity's most advanced warship stand up to the overwhelming might of the alien fleets? "We're entering enemy space," Lieutenant Harris reported, his voice tight with anticipation. "Alien ships are on the radar. Several fleets, ready for battle." "Maintain course," Stevens commanded, her voice calm but filled with determination. "We're not backing down." The Excalibur continued its journey toward the heart of the war zone, and the tension in the air grew thicker. Alien warships and menacing loomed in the distance, their engines flaring as they turned to face the approaching human ship. The first wave of alien ships was an imposing sight, sleek, fast, and heavily armed. They had been dominating the battlefield for years. The sight of the Excalibur appearing in their midst was a shocker, challenge to their long-standing control. The alien fleets moved in formation, their weapons charging. This was no simple confrontation. It was a statement of dominance. They intended to crush the human vessel before it could do any real damage. They had underestimated humanity before, but they would not make the same mistake again. "Enemy ships are locking onto us," Lieutenant Harris said, his hands flying over the controls. "They're preparing to fire." Stevens' gaze hardened. "Activate." The shields, "We're not here to retreat." The Excalibur's energy shields flared to life, creating a shimmering blue dome around the warship. The first salvo of alien fire came in a burst of blinding light. The energy bolts hit the shields with a violent thud, but the human warship held strong. The shield flickered but held steady, absorbing the energy from the alien weapons. "Shields holding," Harris reported, though there was no hiding the shock in his voice. "The Excalibur's shields are holding against their firepower. This is ... unexpected." Stevens allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction before her focus returned to the battle. "Open fire. All guns, take them out." The command was followed by a ripple of energy as the Excalibur's weapon systems came online. The massive cannons along the ship's sides unleashed powerful blasts, their energy beams cutting through space like lightning. The first few shots slammed into the lead alien warship, and its shields flared in response. But the alien shields were no match for the raw power of the Excalibur's weapons. The first alien ship exploded in a flash of light, its debris scattering across the battlefield. "Direct hit," one of the crew members shouted. "They've lost one ship." The alien fleet was stunned. They had expected to overpower the Excalibur easily, but the human ship was unlike anything they had ever encountered. The Excalibur wasn't just holding its ground, it was pushing forward, carving a path through the alien forces. The crew cheered, but Stevens remained focused. The battle had only just begun. The next wave of alien warships closed in, their weapons firing in unison. This time, the Excalibur was ready. The ship maneuvered quickly, dodging the incoming fire with impressive agility. The enemy's shots passed by harmlessly, missing their mark by mere inches. Then, with deadly precision, the Excalibur returned fire. A barrage of high-energy blasts erupted from its cannons, striking multiple alien ships simultaneously. They disintegrated in brilliant flashes of light. "This is unbelievable," Harris muttered, his eyes wide with disbelief. "We're taking them down, Captain." Stevens nodded, but her face remained grim. She knew better than to get too comfortable. "Stay focused," she said. "We've only just begun to scratch the surface. We have to finish this." The battle raged on. The alien forces, though shaken by the unexpected power of the Excalibur, regrouped and launched their counterattacks. The Excalibur was outnumbered, but it was more than a match for its enemies. Every shot it fired was precise, every move calculated. The human crew was skilled, their training paying off in the heat of battle. But even as the human warship tore through the alien fleets, Stevens couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The alien forces were powerful, but they were not the only threat. This war zone was teeming with unknown dangers, and the Excalibur's arrival would not go unnoticed by all factions. "Captain," Harris said, his voice tense, "there's another fleet approaching, much larger this time. They're coming from the far side of the war zone." Stevens narrowed her eyes. "Get us ready, we're not done yet." As the Excalibur continued to devastate the alien fleets, a new danger loomed on the horizon. The human warship had proven its power, but in the war zone, power alone wasn't enough. They would need more than just firepower to survive the coming storm. And as Stevens watched the vastness of the battle unfold, she realized that the true test was still ahead. The Excalibur had shown the galaxy that humanity was back, but now it had to prove it could survive. Turning the tide, the Excalibur continued its relentless assault, cutting through the alien fleets like a blade through paper. Its energy weapons and shields had far surpassed the aliens' expectations, and the battlefield was now littered with the wreckage of destroyed ships. The once confident alien forces were beginning to falter. Their leaders had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. But Captain Stevens knew better than to get too comfortable. Victory was not yet in sight, and the alien command was quick to adapt. The human warship had drawn the attention of every faction in the Warzone, and now the real challenge was beginning. "Captain," Harris called out, his voice filled with urgency. "Another fleet is coming in. This one is different, larger, more advanced. It's moving toward us at full speed." Stephen's grip tightened on the armrest of her command chair. "How long until they're in range?" 10 minutes, Captain," Harris replied. "They're much faster than the other fleets. We won't have time to regroup." "Understood," Stevens said. She stood, her gaze focused on the view screen. The Excalibur had already taken down 2 waves of enemy ships, but this new fleet was different. It wasn't just a military force, it was a statement. The aliens were pulling out all the stops. They would fight with everything they had, and Stevens knew that this would be the moment that decided everything. "Prepare all systems for the next wave," Stevens ordered. "Weapons, shields, and maneuvering. Let's show them we're not here to play." The crew moved swiftly, their hands flying across their consoles. The Excalibur's weapon systems powered up once more, its energy cannons humming with the promise of destruction. The warship's shields flickered and strengthened, ready to withstand whatever the alien fleet would throw at them. It was a race against time. 10 minutes was not long enough to change the course of a battle, but they had no choice. This was the fight of their lives. As the enemy fleet grew closer, Stevens noticed something else. A strange distortion on the edge of the battlefield. It wasn't a ship, at least not in the traditional sense. It was something far more ominous, an enormous structure floating in space, hidden in the shadows of the conflict. The human warship had unknowingly stumbled into a trap. The fleet they were fighting was just a distraction, a decoy. The real enemy had been waiting patiently in the wings. "Captain, there's something else out there," Lieutenant Harris said, his voice tense with realization. "It's massive. A weapon. Some kind of station." Stephen's heart raced. "Is it active?" "Yes," Harris confirmed. "It's powering up, and it's locked onto us." A deadly silence fell over the bridge. This wasn't just a war zone, it was a testing ground, a place where the aliens had hidden their most powerful weapon. The station had been waiting for a target, and now the Excalibur was in its sights. "Captain, we need to get out of here," shouted one of the officers. "That thing's too powerful for us to face head-on." Stephen's eyes never left the screen. She could see the station's weapon charging, a massive energy pulse that would obliterate everything in its path. There was no time to flee. The Excalibur couldn't outrun the weapon, and they couldn't let the aliens see humanity retreat. "We won't run," Stevens said firmly. "We'll take it down. All weapons, focus fire on that station." The crew followed her command, their hands moving like clockwork. The Excalibur's cannons opened fire, launching a barrage of energy blasts toward the station. The alien fleets closed in from all sides, trying to overwhelm the human warship before it could destroy their weapon. But the Excalibur was faster. It weaved through enemy fire, dodging attacks with surprising agility. The massive warship felt like it was dancing, a deadly waltz amidst the chaos. The first few shots from the Excalibur slammed into the station's shields, but the station didn't flinch. It was built to withstand anything except one thing: human determination. Direct hit, one of the officers reported. "The shields are weakening, Captain." Stephen's heart surged with hope. They were getting through. But the station wasn't finished yet. It fired a massive pulse of energy, and the Excalibur rocked. Violently, its shields flickering dangerously. "Shields at 40%, Harris reported, his voice strained. "We can't take another hit like that." "Hold steady," Stevens commanded. "We're not stopping until that thing is gone." The Excalibur continued to pour fire into the station, each shot pushing the alien defenses closer to breaking. But as the station's shields finally collapsed, a new danger emerged. Alien reinforcements had arrived, a fleet of heavily armed warships, all converging on the Excalibur. They were relentless, and they were closing in fast. "Captain," Harris said, his voice tight with urgency, "we're outnumbered. We can't keep this up for much longer. We need to make a decision." Stevens looked out at the battlefield. The Excalibur had already done more than they had ever expected. It had proven that humanity was more than just a bystander in this war. But now, it was clear that the fight was far from over. The aliens had underestimated humanity, but they had no idea what they were truly up against. "We'll take them all down," Stevens said, a fierce fire burning in her eyes. "The Excalibur fights to the end. All hands, prepare for the final assault. This is our moment." The crew responded with a cheer, and the Excalibur surged forward, cutting through the alien fleet like a storm of fire and steel. The tide of the battle was shifting. The human warship had entered the war zone, and it was changing everything. But there was still more to come. The final victory was yet to be won. The final showdown, the battlefield had transformed into a swirling vortex of chaos. Alien warships, once confident in their superiority, were now fighting desperately to maintain control of the war zone. The Excalibur was in the heart of it all, a relentless force of destruction cutting through the enemy like a scythe through wheat. But even as the human warship unleashed its full might, the alien command was not backing down. The final showdown was upon them, and both sides knew this, would determine the outcome of the war. Captain Stevens stood at the bridge, her face illuminated by the glow of the tactical displays. The Excalibur had already decimated countless alien ships, but the enemies were not finished. They were massing their final fleet of force, larger than any the humans had ever faced. Hundreds of ships were now closing in, surrounding the Excalibur in every direction. "We've taken down their reinforcements, but they're sending in everything they have left," Harris reported, his voice tight with urgency. "We're outnumbered 4-1. Stevens didn't flinch. The odds had never been in their favor. "Then, we fight harder. We're not backing down now." The Excalibur wasn't just a ship, it was humanity's final statement. It wasn't about numbers or power. It was about their will to survive, their desire to prove that humanity was a force that couldn't be ignored. And as the alien fleet advanced, Stevens knew that this was their moment to shine. This was humanity's time to stand tall. "Prepare all weapon systems," Stevens ordered. "We'll engage them head on. We'll take the fight to them." The Excalibur surged forward, its engines roaring to life as it charged into the heart of the enemy fleet. Alien ships fired relentlessly, their weapons flashing in every direction, but the Excalibur was too swift. It dodged, weaving in and out of enemy fire with incredible precision. Every shot fired from the human warship found its mark, tearing through the alien ships like paper. The bridge was alive with the sounds of alarms, the cries of the crew as they maneuvered the ship through the chaos. The Excalibur rocked under heavy fire, but the shields held strong. The alien fleet, despite its size, was faltering. The humans weren't just fighting back, they were pushing forward. Shields at 60%, one officer reported, a hint of disbelief in his voice. "Captain, they're not retreating. We're breaking them." "Keep pushing," Stevens said, her voice cold with determination. "We finish this now." The battle continued, and Stevens' heart raced as the Excalibur tore through alien ship after alien ship. She had always believed in humanity's strength, but now she was seeing it with her own eyes. The Excalibur was unstoppable. The tide had shifted, and the aliens could no longer match the relentless fury of the human warship. But just as victory seemed within their grasp, a new threat emerged from the depths of the war zone. From the rear of the alien fleet, a massive ship appeared, a warship so large it seemed to blot out the stars. Its hull was a dark, imposing mass, and its weapons systems were unlike anything the Excalibur had faced before. This was the true weapon of the alien fleet, the ship that commanded fear and respect across the galaxy. Captain Harris said, his voice shaking, "That ship, it's enormous. Its weapons are powering up. We're not going to survive a hit." From that thing, Stevens took a deep breath. This was it, the final test. She had always known that the war would come down to this moment. "Get us in close," Stevens ordered. "We're going to destroy that ship before it can fire." The Excalibur turned sharply, angling itself directly toward the massive alien warship. The enemy fire intensified, but Stevens didn't hesitate. The Excalibur dodged and weaved with unparalleled agility, getting closer to the alien vessel. The crew fought with everything they had, their hands moving quickly to maintain the ship's course. This was their final push, the only chance they would get. The massive alien ship fired, its energy beams streaking across space with the intensity of a supernova. The blast slammed into the Excalibur's shields, and the ship rocked violently. Sparks flew from the control panels, and the lights flickered. But the shields held just barely. "Shields at 30%, Harris reported. "We've got one shot at this, Captain." "We're not done yet," Stevens said firmly. "Fire everything we've got." The Excalibur unleashed its final volley. Every weapon it had, every energy blast, every missile was fired in unison, streaking toward the massive alien warship. The enemy vessel fired again, but this time it was too late. The Excalibur's weapons slammed into its hull, one after another, breaking through its shields and tearing apart its structure. The alien warship fought back fiercely, but it was no match for the relentless assault of the human ship. The final blast hit the alien warship's core, and it erupted in a blinding flash of light, disintegrating into space debris. The battlefield fell silent as the remnants of the alien fleet scattered in all directions. The Excalibur had won. Humanity had won. The crew of the Excalibur erupted into cheers as the massive alien ship crumbled into nothing. But Stevens stood quietly at the bridge, her face calm, her mind focused. The war zone was still full of dangers, but humanity had proven its place among the stars. The victory was not just about destroying a fleet, it was about showing the galaxy that humanity would never back down, no matter the odds. "Captain, we did it," Harris said, his voice filled with awe. Stevens nodded, her eyes on the stars ahead. "This is just the beginning. The war is over, but the galaxy has a new force to reckon with, and we're just getting started." The Excalibur turned away from the wreckage of the battlefield, its engines flaring as it sped into the unknown. There were many more battles to come, but for now, humanity had won its place in the war zone. The ultimate game had been changed, and humanity had proven its strength.